So good evening to everyone. Thank you all for joining our VCSQI winter quarterly meeting. Tonight, we're just going to go over a couple quick housekeeping details just to make sure that our, our Zoom meeting goes smoothly this evening. So as always, please feel free to utilize the chat features. Take yourself off of mute if you have any questions, comments to share. This is an open meeting, so your participation is strongly encouraged. Sherry's cell phone is there too if you want to text her if you have any issues as well throughout the meeting this evening. There is the chat icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. And we also ask that you please enter your name in chat just so we can make sure that we capture attendance. Feel free to, again, to type questions in the chat box, or if you want, you can raise your hand and we will be sure to call on you as well during any Q&A segments. Before we get to our presentations of the evening, I'm going to introduce our VCSQI Quality Improvement Advisor, Ms. Sherry White. Sherry is going to share the details of our CME and CEU program for tonight. Sherry, please take it away.
Honor. Thank you all for joining this evening. We continue to use UVA CME's department to offer a slew of CME credits to you all. This includes maintenance of certification. So Eddie, would you mind going to the next screen, please? And we'll just talk about a few things of how to claim credit. This is just the accreditation acknowledgement, just letting you know that what CMEs are available to you. We do have CMEs for our nurses as well, and physician assistants. Next slide, please, Eddie Bonner. All right, how to claim credit. So if you have never claimed credit before, there are a couple of ways you can do it. You can text the number that is listed there, or you can do so online. And please, if you don't catch this now, everyone who participated and registered, I will send you an email with all this information so that you can claim credit. But tonight's code is 24406 when logging into the system. Hi, please, Eddie Connor. Okay, this is just a reminder. Again, you can text that number above, enter that code, and you will get a confirmation to complete a survey, or you can go online to uva.cloud-cme.com, enter the code and claim your credit. All right, next slide, please, Eddie. Just an update. You can also update your profile as well, and this is just some a snippet of how to do that. And again, I will include this for you in our follow-up email. And I believe that is the last slide. But overall, if you need assistance, please feel free to reach out to me, send me an email, or you may reach out to UVA's CME office directly at uvace@uvahealth.org. Thank you very much. And back to you, Eddie.
Thank you so much, Sherry. So tonight we have a really exciting agenda. We have some updates from our board chair. First up, we will have a presentation from one of our esteemed researchers who will overview some of the latest research from our VCSQI database. And last but not least, we have a really unique patient panel this evening who will share their experiences as cardiac patients with all of us. So first up, I'm honored to introduce our board chair, Dr. Mohammed from VCU, who will share his welcome and highlights from the board and a couple other items from the database and otherwise with us. Dr. Khader, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Good evening, all of you. I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving and happy holidays for the upcoming season. We'll go to the next slide here, Eddie. So one more slide after that. So the main highlights from the board are there are several board members who have served and whose terms have come to an end at the end of this December. And as you could see, majority of them have elected to serve and continue to serve in the future, which is a very good validation as to like, how the members value their contributions to this organization. And I thank each and every one of them for volunteering to continue to serve on the executive board. The other important thing which we're brainstorming at the executive level is to uh, define what should be our target for the upcoming year and the years, so to say, and then also to improve and disperse the collaborative efforts to all of the programs who participate in that. As you know, that we have some really good quality improvement initiatives that have taken a protocol format, and it's always a process of trying to implement them at different centers is an ongoing task, and I have to congratulate Eddie and Sherry for their efforts in this. But we will continue to support them, and that will be like another goal. And along those lines, we also like to expand the membership, especially including more of the cardiology practices who have become part of our organization for the last few years. So those are the main things from the board side. What do you have next? So one of the things that I like to give an update to all the members here is the initiative that we all started regarding the efficiency, and we use the operating room times as one of our first metric. And with the help of statisticians and especially help from Eddie and Sherry, we have come to a very good understanding as to how should we compare the procedures, how should we compare the programs when we say that X amount of the time is required to do a procedure. So what we have done, go to the next slide. These are the times how we defined it. As you could see that the total operating time from the time the patient enters to the time the patient leaves. And that in turn has two segments, the operating time, which called surgery time, and the non-surgery time. And we define the programs as low, medium, or high volume based on the number of bypass procedures we do. But more importantly, what we did is to make comparison more apples to apples. Next slide, Eddie. We use this metric, which incorporates several of the patient morbidities, including the number of bypasses that you're planning to do, so on and so forth, which is the predicted morbidity or mortality risk. So using that as a metric of the patient population, we divided the patient population for bypass surgery only into three groups. Low PROMM is one where the risk is less than 10%. Intermediate is 10 to 20, and the high is over 20. Now, using this metrics of all of the patients that we have, you could see that majority of them fall into the low category, which is like a 62%, and the rest of them are in the intermediate and high. So based on this, tool, we started to see how the programs did with the operating room time, surgery time, and non-operating time. Next slide, Eddie. So here is a dispersion of the total operating room time to do a bypass surgery based on all the patients in this group. That includes low, intermediate, high. Go to the next one, Eddie. So this becomes more of a even sort of like, playing ground now. So for those patients who are at the low risk of PROMM, which is less than 10%, the dispersion across the programs to do a bypass surgery ranges from 4 hours, 51 minutes to 6 hours and 53 minutes. And there's only one program that comes close to the mean value. Everything else is dispersed on either side of it. And we'll go to the next slide, Eddie. We will see the same trend for this high risk PROMM also. And what I have noticed is when I carefully looked at the things, is it, same center that is showing low in all three categories, or is it that the high is in all three categories? Probably not always, but there is a pretty good correlation that those centers that are taking longer to do X number of the procedure also tend to do for the same intermediate, low, and high group of the procedures. Then next slide, Eddie. We also just went ahead and then looked in to see that surgery time, and then the next one, Eddie. The non-surgery time, and we saw the same dispersion. Very few centers fall into the middle of the line. There is a huge variation, and this is what I had in my mind to see why so much variation, and to identify maybe some centers who are doing things more efficiently. For example, in this non-operating room time, there are centers that, who could bring in patient, get ready for the surgery, and then after the surgery, move out of the operating room in 50 minutes. And for other centers, it's taking about 1 hour and 38 minutes. So there is something that is happening that I believe that we can learn from some of these centers. If moving forward, we see the same pattern coming up from the same center again and again, then just like what we did for atrial fibrillation, blood transfusions, we sought out help from those centers, saying, "Can you please share as to like what you guys are doing there?" And I envision that something like this will happen in the future too. Next one, Ed. So this quarterly meeting also is my last quarterly meeting as the chair of the organization. And I just wanted to take an opportunity here to share some of my thoughts. As I stand before filled with gratitude and pride for the work we have accomplished together over the past 2 years. It has been an honor to build on the legacy of Dr. Alan Spear and Dr. Robert Shore, my predecessors, and to contribute in some small way to advancing our shared mission of improving cardiovascular care in Virginia. During my time as chair, I focused on sustaining the momentum of several key projects initiated by my predecessors and introduced an initiative of my own, the objective assessment of efficiency using operating room times as our initial focus. As I have discussed before, this project exemplifies how we can measure and compare the complex processes of cardiovascular care. I'm delighted and proud to let you all know that the operating room efficiency metrics abstract is accepted and will be presented by our fellows, Drs. Patel and El Mohib, at the upcoming National Society of Thoracic Surgeons meeting. I'm very proud of the work these fellows have done in collaboration from VCU and UVA. As I pass the baton to my successor, Dr. Lancey, I sincerely hope this framework is extended to other areas of our work, broadening its impact and ensuring the best outcomes for our patients. Next slide, Eddie. Beyond measurable metric lies a more elusive but equally critical dimension of our work: how patients and their families perceive us and our efforts. Capturing these elements is challenging, but profoundly important and impactful. Allow me to share 2 stories that embody this. Approximately 15 years ago, during the early part of my professional career, I performed an aortic valve replacement and CABG on a patient who, after a long hospitalization, sadly passed away under my care. A year later, I saw the same patient name on the clinic schedule. I immediately recognized it and thought it was impossible to have another patient with the same name. When I walked into the room, I realized this individual was the son of the patient who had passed. He needed a mitral valve repair. After a few awkward moments, I asked him why he chose me as his surgeon. He simply responded, "Because you cared." Then he added, "The outcome of surgery is not always in your hands, but here in you. I want you to do my surgery." I will never forget that moment. It was deeply humbling and validated not just our medical outcomes, but the trust and compassion we provide. It taught me more than anything I had ever learned during my medical education or training. I performed his valve surgery, and fortunately, he is doing well. To this day, I still receive his yearly fitness. We encounter our patients and their families during some of the most vulnerable moments of their lives. If they see compassion and care in us, it unburdens their fears and responsibilities significantly. This in turn strengthens the bond of trust and reinforces the profound impact of our humanity in the practice of medicine. The second story is about a retired nurse who needed bypass surgery and mitral valve surgery. She had clearly defined her wishes to me, including declining dialysis. She had stage 3 kidney disease and a low heart number. After initially showing signs of good recovery from surgery, she developed progressive renal failure and required dialysis. She refused, and we honored her wishes. Her husband, an engineer, kept meticulous notes of her hospitalization and recorded the names of everyone who cared for her. After a few days of developing uremia, she passed away. A few months later, her husband needed a cabbage and came to see me, asking me to perform his surgery. Once again, I was humbled and found myself at a loss of words to describe the emotions I felt. These stories remind me and all of us that what patients and their families see in our work transcends statistics. They see our humanity, dedication, and sincerity. As I stepped away from the role of chair of this esteemed organization, I urge us all to remember that while metrics and efficiencies are essential, it is the unquantifiable aspects, the trust, respect, and understanding we offer to patients and their families that define our legacy. Thank you.
Inspiring, Dr. Cotter. Thank you so much. Appreciate everything you've done for VCSQI, and we look forward to the next chapter, and just always appreciate your guidance and support.
Thank you, Eddie. And also I welcome Dr. Lancy in his upcoming role, and I wish him the best, and I will always be around for any help and guidance. Thank you all.
Phenomenal. Well, Dr. Cotter, we'll look forward to seeing you at our spring meeting in March as well, hopefully. So up next, we have a presentation on VCSQI research projects by Dr. Alex Wisniewski, who is with UVA. He received his medical degree from University of Toledo and is currently a third-year resident. Dr. Wisniewski has contributed to nearly a dozen publications during his tenure as a researcher with VCSQI, and tonight he'll share a presentation titled Creating a National Presence, the Impact of VCSQI on Advancing Literature in Cardiac Surgery. So Dr. Wisniewski, I will turn it over to you, and I will attempt to give you control as well of my screen. So feel free to try that, and you should be able to advance the slides now.
I don't think it's letting me do it. I'm happy to. I can share my screen too if that's okay.
Let's see. Okay. How about now?
No, it's still not letting me.
I'm going to stop sharing then, and you can share the slides from your side.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Eddie. All right. Thank you so much, Eddie and Sherry, for having me and allowing me the opportunity to present kind of on some of the resident side perspective of the VCSQI and all the opportunities it affords us as trainees and as future cardiac surgeons. I also want to give special thanks to Dr. Steve Young, my co-resident, who helped to create this presentation and put this together additionally. I have no conflicts of interest or disclosures to report. So the VCSQI obviously has a very real-world impact for our collaborative as the state of Virginia. It's kind of helped us to better deliver healthcare across the network, across different hospital systems. It's also led to quality improvements and associated cost savings as well. And this is kind of the forefront and most important kind of mission of the VCSQI. But additionally, it affords a lot of opportunities to us as trainees and allows us to kind of look at very large volume studies as well, which is very unique to our institution. And there aren't really, there's only really a handful of other collaboratives that have this opportunity that we have. So we are very, very grateful for it. From looking at different hospitals, we have different patient demographics, hospital demographics in urban, suburban, and rural settings, different practice models, whether it be private practice or academic. And this all allows us to kind of increase the external validity of the studies with applying our findings to other centers as well. You know, we also have superior sample sizes. We can look at, you know, data from thousands and thousands of patients, which is also great and increases the, you know, the power and impact of the studies. And it also allows us to look at uncommon procedures too, just given these numbers, things that don't necessarily occur very frequently, given that we have so many centers participating. We can look at stuff that not a lot of other places are able to look at. And lastly, you know, we have a lot of efficiency in analyzing this data for a few reasons. You know, we have a pretty big cohort of residents that are able to take on projects. And secondly, the process to getting project approval is very straightforward. A lot of surgeons are involved from other institutions as well with helping move projects forward and providing insights. And then Eddie, in terms of, you know, managing the ARMS database, has done an excellent job and is able to kind of get its data in a very expeditious manner, which is not always the case for a lot of different regional collaboratives. And specifically, you know, if we want to do these large STS studies, to do a data request through STS nationally, it takes upwards of a year just to get the data back. So we really have quite a great opportunity here. And from the trainee perspective, this has allowed us to be involved with large database research, which again is a very unique opportunity. It gives us the opportunity to attend and present at national meetings at the Society of Thoracic Surgeons or AATS as well. And lastly, it allows us to collaborate with outside surgeons from the state of Virginia, outside of our institution specifically, get their insight and also their leadership with moving projects forward. So I essentially want to review just some of the publications that we've had from last year. I kind of have a long laundry list, which is excellent from that perspective, but I won't go through them all very detailed whatsoever. And I apologize, these are going to be all kind of UVA studies just from kind of our keeping up. So any other trainees from other centers, unfortunately, was unable to include, but I acknowledge all of their efforts as well. And, you know, with all these publications too, they all come with the caveat in the method section and even in the investigator section that this is part of the VCSQI, which has really increased our national impact. So, you know, these are from the last 2 years in terms of publications. This study looked at effects of socioeconomic distress on risk-adjusted mortality after valve surgery for an infective endocarditis. Endocarditis is obviously a very lethal, can be a very lethal complication. And not a lot of patients get it, but you know, through this large collaborative, we're able to look at very large numbers. And we found with this study that after risk adjustment, the Distressed Communities Index, which measures socioeconomic distress, was independently predictive of operative mortality for patients that get endocarditis as well. And this was published in seminars in thoracic and cardiovascular surgery a little over a year ago. Again, looking at socioeconomic distress, we looked at PCI and CABG, and this interestingly combined both the STS adult cardiac surgery database and the CAF PCI database, and allowed us to kind of make some inferences as to who's getting CABG versus PCI in the setting of patients that should likely be getting CABG. And we found that patients, again, with higher socioeconomic distress had higher odds of PCI as well as higher post-procedural mortality, which allows us to kind of look at some different health determinant outcomes as well across the state. This was published in Annals of Thoracic Surgery, which is a very high impact journal. Again, looking more so again at kind of socioeconomic factors with race, we found additionally that Black Americans were undergoing less frequent multi-arterial grafting. And this again was published in the Annals of Thoracic Surgery and was a presentation as well at the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. This was an excellent study done by Dr. Strobel and Emily Kaplan, who was a medical student here at UVA, looking at outcomes during the COVID-19 pandemic, and found that basically the pandemic had affected all socioeconomic statuses, increasing higher costs and also increasing risk of adjusted mortality. Importantly, this study was actually selected as a plenary talk at the 59th annual STS meeting in the big room, and was selected as the Maxwell Chamberlain Memorial Paper as well, which is quite an accomplishment and kind of demonstrates the national prowess we have as the VCSQI with moving these projects forward. Again, this is a study looking at deep sternal wound infections across the collaborative. It allowed us to really kind of look at our quality metrics and really demonstrated that the rate of our deep sternal wound infections is quite low throughout the state of Virginia, lower compared to SDS national averages, which suggests that we're doing a good job with this. And this was also published in the Journal of Surgical Research. This study looked at kind of operating room versus intensive care unit extubation, either OR extubation versus fast track extubation for patients undergoing on-pump cardiac surgery, and did find a higher risk of reintubation or reoperation for bleeding for patients with operating room extubation. Importantly, this study was also a plenary that was discussed at the ATS and won the Presidential Abstract Award. And importantly, this was relatively controversial at the time, but it prompted a large national STS study that Dr. Strobel took a look at with this question, and demonstrated results that also kind of favored operating room extubation as well in appropriate centers additionally. So this is a question that led to a further question that was able to be clarified with use of national STS data from a follow-up proposal. So a lot of our projects too, they're not going to be total, they're going to be large sample sizes, but not necessarily national sample sizes, but they kind of beg some more questions to be asked and open up doors for national data requests. This is another project from Dr. Strobel, in the age of TAVR. Obviously, surgical aortic valves does appear to be decreasing, but it seems like at least across the, the VCSQI, the appropriateness of us in selecting patients for STABR is getting better and better. So we are selecting the appropriate patients that should begin these operations, which suggest our quality and potentially also our multidisciplinary discussions between cardiology and cardiac surgery is improving substantially, allowing us to do what is appropriate and correct for the patient. Again, these are some studies looking at socioeconomic distress and failure to rescue, and this was published here in the JTCBS as well, and suggests that greater distress communities index is associated with greater risk-adjusted likelihood of failure to rescue after cardiac surgery. This was a study I did with some co-investigators looking at mitral valve repair techniques and kind of both different subsets, and found that there was quite a different mix across the state collaborative. Higher volume centers typically tend to do more of a respect technique, but outcomes regardless for all patients were very good and very low mortality as well, suggesting good quality in terms of mitral valve repair from our collaborative. This again is a study looking at kind of ELSO, Center of Excellence recognition and failure to rescue after cardiac arrest, and suggests also association additionally. These are some more, kind of failure to rescue studies done by Dr. Strobel. And again, these were presented at national meetings and published in very high impact journals. And again, they all fall under the caveat of under the umbrella of VCSQI, which allows us to get some national recognition. More recently, one of our newer research residents, Dr. Nuna, looking at prophylactic left atrial appendage ligation, which is becoming quite a hot topic in the realm of cardiac surgery for patients that are high risk for AFib, and showed that, across our collaborative, we're starting to do this a bit more, which is kind of in trend with the increasing data as well. This study by Dr. Weber looking at CS ALS certification with cardiac advanced life support demonstrated improved failure to rescue after cardiac arrest. And again, this was awarded most recently at AATS with the Presidential Abstract Award, which is a phenomenal recognition. I won't go on and on, but this is a study looking at kind of ICU arrival times and outcomes for patients for those arriving late after hours or on the weekend after hours, and suggests that maybe these patients might be at risk for higher prolonged ventilation. And this was published in Annals of Thoracic Surgery. Dr. Mohammed, who has been working in the lab and also had a CTSNet grant working with some of the VCSQI data, was able to look at socioeconomic distress on hospital readmission and did not find necessarily an association, but also was able to compare both the Distressed Communities Index and the Area Deprivation Index, which both look at socioeconomic distress, which was a bit more unique. And this was also published in JTCVS Open. And this is a study looking at coronary cath after a CABG, which is a very rare complication. However, because we have this collaborative, because we have 17 centers to look at, we have quite a large number of patients that we can analyze and actually pull some data from and make some inferences from. Whereas if this were a single center study, it would be nearly impossible to do because this is such an uncommon complication. And this was again published and presented at a national meeting. And lastly, this is a study, we had done a single institution study at UVA looking at a risk model to look at length of stay after cardiac surgery. And this study specifically, we utilized VCSQI to have a much larger number, and we analyzed greater than 37,000 patients, which is pretty remarkable, and really helped with the calculator sensitivity for predicting who's going to stay in the ICU greater than 3 days or so. And the implication of the study, and it's currently in pre-proof to be published, but we've had some other centers reach out to us for use of this calculator, and they're going to prospectively apply this to their patient cohort to collect some data to see how well the calculator is working. So, these studies have real world implications and are being implemented at other institutions as well. So here's, just kind of a list of studies I just went through, but, there are also numerous other studies that are currently under review, studies that are going to be presented at SDS and AATS in addition. So I think, future directions, and this is, Dr. Cotter and Eddie have been doing an excellent job with this, but, right now we're able to incorporate cath PCI data, cost data, and socioeconomic distress data for utilization with our adult cardiac surgery data, which really gives us an upper hand with publishing unique studies and really robust studies that can have very high impacts at our collaborative level. And really excitingly, with introduction of the TVT registry, which is the transcatheter valve registry, we're going to be able to start looking at TAVR patients. We're going to start looking at M-tier patients, tricuspid interventional patients, as well as those begin to increase in utilization, and allow us to also to kind of link data between this and the adult cardiac surgery database, which will allow us to do comparative studies between, let's say, SAVR and TAVR, or M-tier and mitral valve repair and such, which will be pretty exciting steps moving forward and allow for a lot of very high quality publications. And last but definitely not least, with the STS data rolling out long-term data, I'm not sure the exact implementation date, but with that moving forward, we're going to have a lot of really exciting opportunities to look at these studies, because right now we're limited to 30-day outcomes or in-hospital outcomes. But moving forward, we'll be able to look at long-term outcomes, which is really what we care about for a lot of different quality metrics as well. So I have a lot of special thanks on here. I'll try to keep it to a minimum, but Dr. Cotter and Dr. Tiemann, they've been true, they respond to basically every abstract proposal that's sent out to give kind of their expertise. They help with manuscript writing. Dr. Joseph has also been involved with this quite a bit. Dr. Speard and Luigi, Dr. Shore, all involved with the writing processes and project proposals and improving these to be the best they possibly can. Dr. Mazeppi, Dr. Singh, Dr. Kantos, Dr. Rich, all have also been involved very extensively with helping push these projects forward. Eddie has done a remarkable job with the VCSQI. I'm indebted to him for all the help he's provided with last-minute data requests, with improving things prior to conference presentations and organizing the database, and then Sherry as well with organizing VCSQI and this meeting as well. I'm very thankful. And additionally, I just want to thank all my co-residents who have been really at the forefront of all of this work, putting tons and tons of hours in to helping kind of complete a lot of these projects and move forward. So thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation there, Alex. I don't know if you could hear the clapping, but still going on. I understand how much of an effort goes into taking up each of these projects, and all the residents and the mentors involved at the UVA and also in other places, they really have put in their effort, hours, industry into making this happen. And I just cannot thank you enough for taking part in this process.
Are there any questions, comments from our audience members for Alex?
Alex, that was a lot of great work. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you. It takes a village. We've got quite a big cohort here, and it really helps to get to stay productive and get a lot of these things done with great help and oversight.
You're right. It takes the team. Good work.
Well, fantastic. Thank you again, Alex. We will be sure to send out the slides to everybody just so you have a list of those publications, and we're happy to provide any additional information about those studies. I'll also give an open invitation to all of our members to our Research and Writing Committee, which is open to all of our VCSQI member centers. This is everybody's database, so I just want to emphasize that anybody can be involved in research projects. All our research project submission processes are open, so you are welcomed and encouraged to be part of this. So please let us know if you'd like to be part of that committee, and we would welcome your participation. Fantastic. Thank you again, Alex. We are going to segue into the final segment of our meeting tonight, which will have a different angle than we usually have at our meetings. Tonight we have a panel discussion from cardiac patients. So as you all know, the VCSQI Collaborative is dedicated to improving patient care, and we thought there was no better way to guide our mission than by hearing directly from the individuals we serve. So tonight we have the privilege of hearing the stories, experiences, and insights from cardiac patients who have navigated the healthcare systems, and hearing their perspectives will help us better understand the impact of their hospital experiences, identify opportunities for improvement, and reinforce the importance of compassion and communication in every interaction. We're deeply grateful to our panelists for their openness and courage in sharing their journeys with us, and just want to thank all of them for being here with us tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to first reintroduce our VCSQI Quality Improvement Advisor and wearer of many hats, Ms. Sherry White. Sherry is going to serve as the moderator for our discussion this evening. Sherry, over to you.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Excuse me for multitasking. So something new tonight. Let's go ahead and get started and introduce our first patient. So it is with great honor to introduce you to Mr. John Harrity. John is a lawyer from Northern Virginia, specializing in patient law, who had a serious heart attack in 2016. Please give a very warm VCSQI welcome to John, who may be joined later with his wife, Eileen, who are both joining us this evening to share their story. John, thank you. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Sherry. So my name's John Harrity. I had a heart attack on May 2nd, 2016. And at that time, I was 49 years old. I was in the best shape of my life. We probably all have someone in our life that is over the top obsessive about their health, watching what they eat, exercising like a crazy person. For my family and friends, I was that person. And so I have, and I had at the time, still have today, a life goal of living healthy to at least 134 years old. So I take steps in line with achieving that goal. So I don't smoke, I don't drink. And like I said, I've been exercising for decades, 7 days a week, and following a strict healthy diet. And on May 2nd, 2016, I'm playing in my regular Monday night basketball game. It was the second time that I had worked out that day. We were minutes away from wrapping up for the night when I started getting some unusual shortness of breath. And when that didn't go away, I stopped the game. And as I was leaving the gym, I knew there was something wrong. I had zero idea of what that possibly could be and never would have imagined that it was a heart attack. I asked my friends to call 911, and I immediately passed out, and I woke up 3 weeks later in a bed at Fairfax Hospital. So that night on the basketball court, I had a widowmaker heart attack. And fortunately for me, my friends were brave enough to act that night. So within seconds of me hitting the floor, my friend Rocky Burnson had called 911. And within seconds after that, the 911 operator was walking my other friends, James Bennon, through the cadence for performing CPR. As James was performing CPR, the 911 operator asked Rocky to go into the school and get the AED. And he attempted for many minutes, running up and down the halls frantically, even talking to the cleaning people who had no idea what he was talking about. And he came back empty-handed because he couldn't find it, and he didn't want me dying back there while he was running through the school. When I got to the hospital that night, things got significantly worse for me. I had never been a patient in a hospital before, and I seemed to have a reaction to just about everything they gave me. So they gave me a blood thinner, and that caused bleeding into my lungs, and now I'm going into respiratory distress. They gave me something as trivial as Lipitor, and I have rhabdomyolysis as a result of getting that, and that affected my liver and shut my kidneys down. The Fairfax Hospital had to go with a Hail Mary in an attempt to save my life, and they told my wife, we can put him on ECMO and hope that his body heals or he's going to die. And my wife obviously chose the right one of those options, and she picked ECMO. And I was on the ECMO machine for my heart and lungs part of the time, but mostly for my lungs, and I was on it for 3 weeks. So when I woke up 3 weeks after asking the guys to call 911, I remember asking them to call 911. Now I'm lying in a bed in a hospital. I have a very serious blood infection. I've got blood clots. I've got tubes down my throat, so I can't speak. I'm hopped up on fentanyl, so I'm not able to think straight. And if all of that wasn't enough, I was paralyzed too because I hadn't moved for 3 weeks. So, I think overall the doctors and the nurses at Fairfax Hospital were amazing. They're an instrumental part, obviously, in me being here today. But I'm here to talk about it from a patient perspective. So I'll talk about some of the good things during those. So I was in intensive care for 8 total weeks, 3 of those unconscious. So I'll talk about the good and the bad of the 5 weeks that I was in intensive care. So for the first week when I woke up, the fentanyl was absolutely playing with my mind. My mind was going a million miles per hour day and night. I was not sleeping. I felt helpless. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't communicate with people to tell them what was going on with my mind. I didn't know how to get it to slow down. No one was communicating with me to tell me that, hey, you're on fentanyl, or we're weaning you off fentanyl and it's going to come to an end at some point. And 4 days into not sleeping, I told my wife, I just can't keep doing this. I don't know what to do to stop it. I'm done. And she went out and told my identical twin brother, who then came in and yelled at me. And that snapped me back into at least focusing in on, like, I've got to get this to stop. And at the end of that first week, they took me down to put a trach in, and I can remember still thinking about, like, I don't know what to do to get my mind to stop racing like this, and I'll just figure it out when I get back from this procedure. And when I came back from the procedure, it had been, I don't know if it got out of my system by then, but my mind was sharp again. And then I started focusing in on my recovery. I never asked a doctor during the time that I was in the hospital whether I was going to make a full recovery. I was still at that point trying to figure out everything that happened. My heart was essentially back to normal, at least from an operating perspective. The main issue that I had was really paralysis and my ability to breathe. I still had blood clots and things, but they weren't really affecting me that much. But I'm at times not able to take a breath because of the fluid that's in my lung that comes up into my throat, and I have to try to communicate without being able to talk or be able to move with my family to get a nurse in to stick a tube down my throat to suction me so that I can take a breath. And very quickly, we realized with my family there on that first day where my mind is back, that I have no way to communicate with the nurse at night when my family isn't there watching me. So my family, luckily, the entire time I was there, my family was with me from 7 a.m. in the morning to 11 p.m. But during those times that they're not, I'm in a bed and I can't talk and I can't move my hands. And so, and would never have been able to push the call button to call a nurse in if I needed to be suctioned out again at night. So they got me that first day. They said that they had a touchpad, so they put the touchpad next to my hand. The problem is the first night the nurse comes in at around midnight to reposition me or something. She takes the call pad, the touchpad, and she hangs it up on the thing with the IVs, and then she walks out of the room. And I'm looking at it over there and I'm watching her walk out, and I'm hoping and praying that she's going to make eye contact with me so that I can tell her, like, hey, you left that up there. I need it next to my hand. And she just walked out. And I really literally thought, like, this is the night that I'm going to die. That I'm not going to be able to take a breath at some point. And she obviously has it. I'm not going to be able to communicate with anybody. Obviously didn't die that night, but the next day when my family was there, I made sure to communicate with them. And it was either through lip reading or through them. They had a board with letters on it, and they would move their finger across and I'd shake my head so I could spell words out to them. They put a sign up at the exit of my room saying, like, make sure that he has that call pad next to his hand every single time that you're leaving the room. So that was the only incident that I had where I wasn't able to communicate by pushing something to call the nurse in. I'm somebody that was motivated to get out of the hospital, and I didn't have any doubts that I was going to get back to 100% regardless of what had happened to me. And when I was somebody prior to this, and it continued while I was in the hospital, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I work out. And when I was in the hospital, I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And because my family isn't coming till 7 and I can't eat anything until 9, because that's when breakfast is served, I'm just laying in this bed for 4 hours. And so we would have the nurse come in the morning whenever I would wake up, and she would put those sponge balls next to my hands. And I would work out for 2 hours by squeezing the balls, visualizing moving my arms because I was unable to move them at all, visualize moving my legs. I wasn't able to move my legs. And so I just continued that the entire time I was in the hospital. And for the 8 weeks, I regained my ability to move my arms. I still couldn't move my legs when I left the hospital. I had bed sores. I know these days we've got kind of pads. I don't know if they had them. They didn't give them to me. That would take the pressure points off of you. I got bed sores on my butt, and when the times when my family was there and I said, "You've got to get someone in here to reposition me." It's hours after the time where I really needed somebody to come in and reposition me. They did not do a great job of repositioning me. The time where I felt good was when they would put me on a Hoyer lift and put me in a chair. And I had the nurses, even though I know it's not protocol, they would leave me in the Hoyer lift and they would leave me less than an inch above the mattress just to take. I felt great when I was on the kind of the hammock. And they would do that for me pretty regularly because it was the only time where my butt didn't hurt a ton. And it still hurts today when I take long car rides or go on an airplane ride from sitting. The other thing that I had the nurses do, because I'm a very active person, and being in a room week after week after week after week is exhausting. It was like prison to me. And so anytime they would take me down for a procedure, I'd tell them to go real slow and sit me by a window for a few minutes so that I can just at least get some sunlight on me. And I also convinced the nurses several times that regardless of the fact that I had so much equipment that had to go with me, they took me out onto the patio several times and let me just sit out in the sun, and it was absolutely fantastic. So as I mentioned, I spent 8 total weeks in intensive care, and at rehab, my main question was, how long until I'm going to get out of here and get back home and regain my mobility? And again, arms worked during that time. My legs, I couldn't even move them slightly. They told me 8 to 10 or 6 to 8 weeks, and I walked out of rehab 2 weeks later. I was highly motivated to get out of there. I did cardiac rehab after I came home, but it was about a month after I came home, and I again took my recovery into my own hands, and I started walking. I would wear a bike helmet, and I would go out into our pipe stem and walk up and down with my walker, and then eventually could walk without the walker. And then I got on the treadmill. And by the time I went to cardiac rehab, I was walking for an hour on the treadmill every day at an 8% incline at a 15-minute per mile pace. And I got to rehab, and that lasted an hour. And they said, "You're doing well beyond the end of our program. Just keep doing what you're doing." And I went back home, and that was the end of cardiac rehab for me. I've made 100% recovery. I didn't have any doubts that I was going to. And the doctors say it's unusual. I'm a patent attorney. I'm not a medical person. I haven't studied the heart since having this incident. But the doctors say it's unusual that there should be some markers, I guess, when they do an EKG or something that showed that I had a heart attack. I don't have any of those markers. And my cardiologist said, if you didn't look at my medical history and did any scan of my heart or lungs, you would never know that I ever had any event, especially one as serious as what I had. My heart attack was the best thing to have ever happened to me. I woke up a different person than the guy who asked my friends to call 911. It rewired my brain. I've got emotions today that I didn't have before. My priorities are different. I am a partner of a patent law firm that I founded with my identical twin brother, and we revamped our firm, and we have a huge, our mindset and kind of the tagline that we use all the time is give to give for the reason, because giving is the right thing to do. And we started a foundation called Harrity for Charity, where we give 5% of our firm profits. 100% of our employees give a portion of their paychecks to one or more of our partner charities. We wouldn't hire someone that wouldn't make that commitment. It's that important to us. And these days, I volunteer a lot of time with the American Heart Association. Over the last 5 years, I've chaired one of their biggest events in the DC area called Lawyers Have Heart. We raised $1.4 million this year for our event. And I get an opportunity a lot to speak about a couple of things, bystander CPR and how important that is. It saved my life. And the other thing I get to talk about and spread the word is that healthy people with no characteristics for heart disease, which was me, can have a heart attack. I had no clue that that would ever be an issue for me. So I like to spread that word to those healthy people like I am and was, who are unaware that this disease can affect them too. Sherry, that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. Please stay on with us if you don't mind. We're
Will
going to
do. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to hold our questions and comments towards the end. We would like to hear from all of our patients or our special guests first. So without further ado, let me introduce you to another brave warrior who is going to share their experience with us, Mr. Don Pruett. Don is an architect and a father of two. He lives in Northern Virginia. He's going to share his experience with his heart attack that he underwent less than a year ago. He is now fully in recovery and is a proud advocate. Don, if you don't mind, if you can take yourself off of mute and share your screen, we will love to hear your story.
Share my screen.
Oh, no, do not share your screen. I'm sorry. No. Just want to say thank you.
Yeah. I don't look good on camera, but you know, what can I say? And I'm honored to be here. And John, your story is the exact opposite of mine. We do share a commonality in that we both experienced a widowmaker. And my duration and my experience is very different than yours, which I'm happy to say was a short duration. On November 3rd, 2023, I'm walking my dog and I feel my legs become weak. Prior to that, I had taken my daughter to school and broke out into a sweat and felt indigestion, but I had been taking Tums during the week and just figured it was another bout. So as I'm walking the dog, I get over to this grassy area and my legs give out even more. And I just sat down and I knew I was going nowhere. My daughter, my older daughter, is a special needs student, and the dog is her service dog. So very well behaved. I'm now down on the ground sitting, and he just sits down next to me. I did not know what was going on. I called my wife, and she said, call 911. Like I did. And I called 911, and they answered the phone and said, please hold. So that was a moment of a little shock to me. I'm on hold with 911. I DM'd a neighbor and they came out just as 911 came back on the line, and I handed them the phone because at that moment I was down into a full laying down position. First responders came. I don't know how many pads they put on me and took off, but we did go to the hospital in the ambulance. Now, on TV, they always portray heart attacks as these dynamic, painful, quick impact events that just you collapse and pass out from. And John's story is very much that. I did not feel pain. I did not feel anything remotely close to what would describe a heart attack. So off to the hospital we go. The paramedics are working with me, giving me medication, and I'm texting work, as crazy as that sounds. It was a coping mechanism, basically, and it worked. Off to the hospital. And when I arrived at Fairfax Inova, as we entered the emergency room, I noticed that there's this room over to the corner has like a number of people standing in it, and the person in front is in a white coat. And I was thinking to myself, is that room for me? And sure enough, it was. They were waiting for me to arrive. I'm always fascinated at how first responders and hospitals communicate back and forth. So they pretty much knew I was arriving and went into the room. They started preparing. They started explaining everything that they were going to do, apologizing for anything they thought would upset me. And within 10 minutes, that's my timeline, I believe, they announced that there was a blockage and they were sending me off to cath. Very quickly, my wife arrived at that time, headed off to the cath lab, and in we went. They prepared me. One nurse apologized because she had to do something that I was probably not prepared for, and that was she had to shave half my groin area. And in a cold room, let's put it this way, men often get embarrassed. So while that's going on, the doctor is preparing my arm for the access point. That's the primary. And only use, as far as I know, local anesthesia or a local anesthetic. And at a certain point announced he was going in because there was communication always in the room. I literally felt the catheter go up my arm, into my chest, and I turned to the large screen and watched it in my heart, in the LAD, and watched the dye, saw the blockage, just observing everything. And they're talking and always keeping me assured of what they're doing. 100% blockage. After a few seconds or minutes, announced it was open, called out stent sizes, and within a very short period of time, they're preparing me to go to my room. So the total time from arrival to the hospital to getting into my room was approximately 66 minutes. So I am assuming that that stent, the blockage in the stent was in place in less than an hour, which is that golden hour. Into the room, and a sea of people coming in and out, explaining who they are, what they're doing. It was a very mind-blowing experience. I didn't catch up to what had happened until the cardiologist came in later that day and said I had a Widowmaker heart attack, and it has a 12% survival rate. And that was a bit of a shock. The bigger shock is I was out of the hospital in less than 27 hours and back home. It was that fast. And it took me days to reconcile just what had happened. So I'm in and out, and actually beginning this pre-rehab phase, if you want to call it, getting home and starting to understand what had happened and what I needed to do next, the recovery. So my experience in the hospital was absolutely wonderful, surprising, quick. The only complaint was it took too long to get me the Tylenol so I could fall asleep. So I was up from 5 a.m. until around 3 a.m. when I finally fell asleep. And then they started coming in the room at 5:30 to take my blood and do whatever else. So I had very little sleep. And when I got home, I really enjoyed the nap. So my experience was very quick. I was out of the hospital faster than I could have ever imagined after experiencing an event of this nature. There is no heart disease history in my family. I thought I was in reasonable shape. I am stressed. I do worry. I don't know what contributed or what brought this or how you get 100% blockage when everything seems to be fine. So my contribution is the exact opposite of John's in that it happened so quickly and I observed every minute of it. I felt everything. And having the conversations was absolutely wonderful. When I did go to cardiac rehab, I was scared. I'm going to be honest, because I didn't know what to expect. I did do the assessment, but I didn't know how my heart would respond. According to my cardiologist, my heart is 100% normal now. I've recovered. I also decided to create my own recovery plan, and that included basically 4 phases. The pre-phase was waiting 2 months before cardiac rehab, starting rehab, but I wasn't interested in focusing on exercise more so than I was interested in focusing on the workout that would help me and my heart. Phase 1, focus on the heart. The next part I did was phase 2, find a gym and see where I am strength-wise, and then start to build that strength. Phase 3 was continue building strength and get your mind back. One of the things I did learn is a heart attack not only affects you physically, it affects you mentally. And I wish at the hospital someone would have talked to me about that. But I do see a therapist. My mind is good. And my phase 4 is I got to eat better. It's very easy to fall back into that routine of, oh, I'm going to grab something from McDonald's or Taco Bell. So I need to eat better, and I'm working on that now. That's my phase 4. So as a patient and as a whirlwind patient, the way I felt, I was fascinated with how efficient the teams were that made sure, which includes the first responders, that I had the chance to keep going and I had the chance to survive. And I survived with a bruised heart and not a damaged heart. And I was told I can make 100% recovery. That's my story, and I'm writing about it.
Thank you so much, Don. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you joining and sharing your journey with us. Just a heads up for everyone who is on the call with us today, please note that we are streaming our patient segment online via Facebook on both VCSQI and our VHAC Facebook pages. So up next, please allow me to introduce you to our last and final special guest. Please allow me to introduce you to Elizabeth Rainey. Liz is a dedicated nonprofit leader and a new mom. It is important for us to note that the stories that John and Don shared are very similar. There are different perspectives that we can look at as well. So this evening, we are aiming to identify both the successes and also the barriers to care. Our DEI work group connected us with Liz, who will share her experience with us, highlighting the opportunity for improvement within the health system. Liz, thank you for joining. If you would not mind showing your video and also unmuting yourself so that we can hear your amazing story.
Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Oh my goodness, you guys' story. John, I was like, I was just waiting for the next thing to happen. You guys, I commend you guys. Stories is definitely moving and inspiring to hear. And I'm in agreement that you will live until 134, you said? 34. You know, I have an aunt that always says that. I'm like, yeah, okay. But to hear somebody else like you say that and working towards it, that's amazing. And I'm going to tap into that. So my story is relatively different than the two gentlemen that just spoke. I am now the 34-year-old mother of 3, thankfully. At the time, well, my cardiac story started at the age of 27. I was a young mom. I was in the best shape of my life. I just had my first child at the age of 27, and I was excited to be a new mom. And going through that process, the pregnancy process was amazing. I had no prior complication. I had no health issues. In my family background, I do know that we have a high blood pressure challenge. Um, with being a West African descent, it's not a lot of information that we know of as far as our family background, because for some odd reason they tend to not share that. So, I'm at the doctor and they're asking me, does this run in your family? Does that run in your family? And I'm saying, I don't know, because I don't know this information because my grandma haven't told me, my mom haven't told me. Um, Fast forward, I had my beautiful Eliza, who is now 7-year-old and running the household. Like I said, my pregnancy was amazing. I work with the Boys and Girls Club, and I've been there for the past 13 years, and I'm very active. During my pregnancy, I was playing dodgeball with the kids and playing doing morning workouts with them. So it was a great pregnancy. And then we had the baby. A few weeks after, I just noticed that I was like, just really tired. But I'm thinking I'm a new mom. There's no blueprint to this. My husband and I trying to figure it out. Who's gonna stay up at night with the baby, pumping and breastfeeding and all that good stuff. Um, I haven't had my 2 weeks postpartum checkup yet. So while waiting for that, I would notice I would have moment of just like I would be overwhelmed, would just really, really, really tired. And the night sweats and all that. Again, I didn't pay attention to it because those are all postpartum symptoms, right? Those are all postpartum, at least according to my doctors and things that I'm reading online. Fast forward my 2 weeks checkup, I went to my doctor, who was amazing at the time. Um, she's checking my blood pressure. She said, Liz, I need you to go to the emergency room right now. And I was like, her name was Dr. White. I was like, lady, I am exhausted. I'm tired. My baby's at home. I need to go home and take a nap. And she said, no, I really need you to go. So I looked at my husband. I was like, what is happening? And she was like, your blood pressure is just really elevated. And I was like, I'm not sleeping. I'm really tired. She was like, no, go to the emergency room. My husband said, Liz, let's go. So I said, okay. By the time we got to the the emergency room, my blood pressure was so high. Doctors was running around trying to figure out, how is it that you're still talking to us? How is it that you're still moving around? I was immediately put on magnesium to put my blood pressure down. Later came to find out that I had postpartum preeclampsia. And postpartum preeclampsia, excuse me, is not, again, in the African American community and being a woman of African descent, it's not something we talk about. We don't know these things. I was never educated on it. I never heard of it. My pregnancy was great. I had no complication. So I'm looking at them like, what are you talking about? And what is that? So my husband started looking things up. We started calling relatives that are in the healthcare field. And my doctors told me that it was unusual because typically most women have challenges with preeclampsia. So either during pregnancy or at the end of pregnancy. Mine happens at the end of my pregnancy, actually postpartum of my pregnancy. So it was extremely challenging. And after I think I was in the hospital for like 3 days or so because my blood pressure just was not going down. Um, Thankfully, my doctor came in and I felt like I was being tested for so many things, or the medication that they were using, they were using me to figure out what works and what don't work because none of the medication that was being provided was working. Not until my doctor, who was African American at the time, said, "Hey, let's try Procardia," and statistically, that helps African American women and the Black community to be able to target blood pressure situation. And within 10 minutes, that worked. My blood pressure was down. So I said, "Okay, great. This is good. I get to go back home and still reconnect with my baby." I got back home. I could not sleep. I can feel my heart beating in my entire body. I can hear it in my eardrums. I can feel it in my neck. I was so restless on my bed. I would just lay out on my bedroom floor. And I was like, goodness, what is happening? My blood pressure was being stabilized. And I knew something was wrong. I went to a primary doctor, and I explained to her all of the symptoms, explained my medical history, and she essentially told me that it was in my head. And I was like, no, it just, I don't feel right. The blood pressure it's okay now. Everything else is fine, but I don't feel right. The fatigue that the last gentleman spoke about, my legs would be weak, and I'm sitting here, I was like, I know something is going on with my body. And I know I'm going through a postpartum phase, but something is not right. And I'm being told it's in my head. And nobody is really listening to me because I'm in the postpartum phase, and all of this supposed to be normal. So I said no. And I told my husband, I was like, we have to figure out what is happening. We're talking to this person, talking to that person. Essentially, we was left to do our own research and figure things out on our own. Thankfully, I married an amazing man who is pro health and wealth. I mean, absolutely everything. So he took it on and supported me in so many ways to be able to figure out what was going on with me, because I feel like nobody was listening to me and nobody was believing the symptoms that I was, describing to them. And to find a cardiologist was the most challenging thing. To even get an appointment, I'll call and say, hey, this is happening, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, you should go see your postpartum doctor. I did that. You should go see your primary doctor. I did that. And I'm still feeling everything that I'm feeling. Thankfully, it was a doctor in the Woodbridge area, Dr. Chudawape. So amazing. So, so amazing. I went and visited him, and I explained everything, and I told him they had me on a really high dosage of the Picardia at the time, again, in addition to the postpartum care. And I explained everything to him, and we did a lot of tests. We did stress tests, we did EKG. I had multiple appointments. He would call and check on me. And the medication, the dosage of the medication was so strong that it was giving me palpitation. In addition to the postpartum symptoms and my hormones and everything else getting adjusted. So I was extremely glad that one, we was on the right track, right? Two, and most importantly, I had somebody that was listening to me. We would send him an email because I would wake up at night, I would be drenched in sweat. I was like, again, I know this is postpartum, but it shouldn't be this way. And again, he listened to me. Every visit, he heard me out. Every visit, we were able to have a discussion about, what to do next, what to eat, what questions I need to ask my postpartum care doctor to be able to better understand the medication I was on, the dosage of the medication. So he was educating me as my husband and I were doing our research to be able to essentially stay alive. Because as the other gentleman was saying, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, dealing with any kind of health challenge, whether it's cardiac related or any kind of health challenge, and also your mind. I was extremely detached from my baby. I was extremely detached from my household. I wasn't myself. I'm eating dinner. I'm experiencing heart palpitation, and I'm just not present. I don't know what's happening. How am I going to get over this hump of feeling like myself again or feeling present again? So when Dr. Chidowape, we essentially just came up with a game plan to the dosage of the medication. And thankfully, as he did the tests and stuff, nothing was really showing up. So we narrowed down to the medication, and we narrowed down to postpartum care. And he also prescribed when I'm having symptoms or having episodes, what to do. Those things I should have got from my primary doctor. Some of those things some of the conversation that I was having with him as my cardiologist, I should have been having it, I should have received those information from my primary doctor. But I was being told that it was in my head, this is normal, it's gonna go away, you're a new mom, you're exhausted, you need to rest. No, it wasn't just all in my head. It was things that was triggering everything that I was going through. So thankfully, I didn't just accept the news of, oh, you would be okay, or this is your postpartum stage, because I could have had a heart palpitation on my bedroom floor. It could have led to something way worse. I don't know, you know? So I will wrap up by saying, if any healthcare provider that is on the line, when you are talking to any person, you know, just listening is an amazing way to start. At times, our healing, my healing start with him just listening to me with what was happening, understanding. I feel like most of the doctors that I was talking to, they were listening to respond and not listen to understand. Right? So we weren't getting anywhere because I was being told what to do instead of having a team to figure out how do we go from here. I was just being told what to do. And being told what to do didn't get me anywhere because it was no resolution, you know? So just to have a holistic wraparound health. If you are a physician, you know, you have patients that it can be a simple headache, whatever their challenging circumstances is, just listen to them and allow them to have an input. You know, you obviously know better, right? I have a criminal justice degree. I have nothing about healthcare. I know none of that. But now I know a lot. I know a lot about postpartum preeclampsia. I know that statistically, a lot of women suffer with challenges as far as like cardiac health due to pregnancy. I didn't know any of those because my parents, being was African descent, they're not educated and informed about these things. So when now having three girls, it is my responsibility not only to educate myself, educate them in the community that I serve. Because a lot of the women here are not informed. They're not informed and they're often dismissed. And when you're in a situation where you're going essentially head to head with your provider, at times you're just like, you know, they know better. But it's not often like that. I feel like it should be a team effort. So thankfully, I didn't experience the heart attack. I didn't experience having to, you know, have surgeries and all that stuff. But who knows? It could have led to that. But I stood up for myself. I spoke up for myself, and I educated myself. So I was able to get to a place of recovery. And it took me a while to get to a place of being comfortable. Well, when my heart is, you know, racing, I'm like, I'm okay. You know, do some of my exercises and ensure that other things I'm eating healthy. I'm checking my blood pressure. I'm taking my medication. And now I'm perfectly fine. I've had two girls after the first after the first baby. My blood pressure is stabilized. My Bacardi is on the lowest dosage that they have available. So I'm so honored and blessed to be here and to be a part of this group. And honestly, when everyone's sharing their stories and all the information from the doctor, I was like, maybe I went into the wrong field. Maybe I went into the wrong field, but I'm happy to be here, and that's my story, and I'm honored to be able to share with you all.
Thank you so very much for sharing your story with us. So let me just add a few spotlights. I would love to spotlight our amazing panelists. And as you can see, John's wife, Eileen, is joining us as well. Hello, pleasure to meet you. Thank you for joining us. So let's take the moment to open the floor to our patients to get some valuable insight from them. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to take yourself off mute. And while you're doing that, there's a comment that came through the chat from Sylvia, one of our members. She just wanted to thank you for sharing your stories. It's so amazing, and they need to be told. Please keep sharing. So meaningful.
Hi, I have a comment. First of all, thank you all. This was very educational and enlightening, and it takes courage to share your story. So thank you for that. John, I had a question specifically for you. In your story, you mentioned you had a twin brother. So has he gotten extra cardiac care now based on what happened to you? Just a question.
Yeah, so during those 3 weeks where I was unconscious, he ran out to the cardiologist to get tested to see if there were any issues, and it came back fine. And in fact, after the fact, when I met with my cardiologist after I got out of the rehab, I asked, like, what could I have done differently to prevent this from happening? And he said, look, you could have come in that day. I could have given you every possible test, and I would have said you're in excellent shape. And then you die that night of heart disease. He's like, we can't predict people like you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Alan Spear. I'm a cardiac surgeon, and I've been at Inova since '82 is introduction, and I've also been involved with the VCSQI since its inception in 1994. And I'm struck at all these decades that we spent with our obsession, really, with excellence and outcomes and protocols, quality improvement. But over these years, we've really not heard from and paid attention to you, the most important part of our careers, the patients, and how meaningful it is to hear really your stories, each of you from your different perspectives. And also, I think the criticisms about being better listeners. As a surgeon, I'm not a great listener. I'm great at doing things, but I need to be a better listener. But I guess my question is, this evening takes you back to a very difficult and important part of your lives that will be with you forever, and your families, and with forever. And I know that's in many ways hard to do it, but how have you really been able to package this, or to deal with the, I'll say, repercussions, but just these such a trying and difficult time? Has that been able to be reconciled? Has it been able to be resolved? Or is it still an anchor?
Yeah, I'll go first, and then I'm going to let Eileen, who struggled more with my heart attack than I did. From a mental health perspective, I didn't have any issues whatsoever once I got out of that crazy first week. I was very focused on recovery, and again, I'm a half full type person and had zero issues with anything from a mental health perspective. But she didn't. So go ahead, Eileen, you.
No, it's been 8 years, and I've struggled all 8 years up until this past year, where I worked more on myself than I had in the past. It was a lot of PTSD because John was in the hospital for a very, very long time. Even coming home was very difficult on me because I had to take care of him. And after everything he went through, it was very stressful for me to have him home. Even though he was doing well, it was always in the back of my mind that this could easily happen again. And I basically have held on to that for 8 years. So yes, I struggled 8 years until recently, where I finally worked more on me, as opposed to how I overcome that fear of something happening to him again.
For me, I would say yes in the beginning. But as the year went on, I developed this like superpower, right? In the early stages of everything, I was extremely nervous about absolutely everything. If you've ever experienced a major heart palpitation, it is you think you're dying, so it triggers so much in me. It worsened my postpartum depression that I was, already going through. So I doubled my therapy instead of, once a month. I started going every 2 weeks. But as far as developing a superpower, I developed because I wasn't one that spoke up. Um, Again, I think it's a background thing. Being was African descent, we are taught that whoever that's in a authority position, they know more than you. Whether you're talking to a lawyer or your teacher or your doctor, you always have to, what they say is final, but that's not often the case. So I had to unlearn a lot of things to be able to develop this superpower, to be able to speak up for myself. Now, when I go to the doctor, I'm able to ask in-depth questions. I'm able to allow you to speak and tell me what you think. I have this skill set where when I do go to the doctor, I come home, I read my doctor's notes. Everything that is in that note, if it sounds funny or I don't understand, my next visit, I'm going to ask you questions. And I love the fact that I'm grateful for the experience that I've had with that because my third pregnancy, I had to utilize that superpower more than I did with my first child because I had a physician this time around who didn't listen to me at all and wanted to induce me because of her own selfish gain. So that superpower that I developed, speaking up for myself, saved me and my third child because I had to say no. I was perfectly fine. I'm glad you want to go on vacation. That's fine. Go on vacation. But I would pass 38 weeks and I'm perfectly fine. And with me sticking up for myself, I have a healthy 4-month-old. We're perfectly fine. And if I wasn't, if I didn't experience what I did with the postpartum preeclampsia, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I would just, okay, that's fine. When do you need me to show up? And oftentimes that's not the case. I think everything needs to be a team. So I don't know that if I don't know if I answer your question, and that was extremely long-winded, but I got some help. I got some help.
So I guess I will add to the conversation here, but with a twist. And that twist is it definitely impacts you psychologically and reconciling not only the event that you just survived, there could be other outside impacts that you're not necessarily reconciling also. My example would be my family, we survived COVID physically, but my youngest daughter has severe anxiety and my wife is trying to deal with that. And I'm trying to deal with my recovery. And all of this came to a head where I had to pursue my recovery on my own. No support. The support had to go elsewhere to the kids. And with my daughter having special needs, we finally got that diagnosis this year. So I did need to reconcile not only the fact that I had this impact of a health event, but was also experiencing the family event or the family impacts. By getting mental health, I am stronger, like Liz has pointed out. She becomes the decision maker. I salute John for his ability to have a focus that very few people do have, and John's wife for the struggles I'm going to say that she's had. And I've also talked to a lot of cardiac patients this past year and have learned how afraid they are to do anything. They will sit on the sofa and just wait for the next event because they do not want to get out they don't have the confidence to take on the challenge of a good recovery. And I read this all the time in articles and talk to people. So I felt that I needed to be strong, like everyone here, and find a way forward. And that included building my confidence in cardiac rehab and approaching it from that point of view, not I'm going to exercise and do all this stuff, but literally develop confidence that I can do the next steps and that my heart will follow me. But also I have to clear my mind, reconcile my thoughts, which also involves reconciling my life. A heart attack changes you. It sort of tells you that the sands in the hourglass are still moving. It's your choice to either turn the hourglass and extend that time or sit and watch it waste away. So I had to make some philosophical decisions, and I did. And I'm stronger for doing that. And I'm looking forward to getting on my mountain bike again. Now, I don't want to fall because I bruise easy with all of the blood thinners. I'm still in my first year. Well, actually, November 3rd, I passed my first year. I want to get back on my skis. I don't want to fall. And I'm athletic. For my age, I enjoy doing things. And so I want to also share my recovery with others to let them know that, you know what, it's okay to be scared. Create a baseline and then see if you can do a little better. And if that works with a few, I've done my job. Hopefully that answered your question.
Well, let me add my voice to others in thanking you for reminding us why we're doing what we do. And I know this is a difficult, and you've taken time away from your families, and we're so appreciative of your perspectives, your experience, strength, and hope. And thank you so much for this experience with us. And we wish you just the best holidays ever. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Here. Does anyone else have any questions for our amazing panelists? And before I let you go, Eileen, I really wanted you to join just to share your perspective. You know, your husband was unconscious for 3 weeks. Share with us, if you wouldn't mind, what was your experience like?
Oof, that's a tough one. It was hard. It was very, very difficult. Very difficult. Being told constantly that he's like on the cusp of not making it was difficult. Was very difficult. I did get to the point where I told them they had to stop doing that because it wasn't doing me any good. It wasn't doing my family any good. I understood where he was at. We wouldn't be there if I didn't understand that. So basically, I just asked them I came in, I said, I just need to know how he's doing and what's our goal for today. That's all. I don't need to be reminded of the dire situation that we're in because I already know that. And reminding me wasn't helping. So just telling me like where we're going, how we're moving forward, that's all I wanted to know. So yes, I mean, 3 weeks he was unconscious, but the 12 weeks he was away, the whole stay was hard. It was extremely, extremely stressful. Extremely stressful.
Wow, that is extremely amazing. And everyone, VCSQI members, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask our amazing panelists. I'll pause and I won't talk too much. But if there is anyone with any questions, please go ahead because I have a ton. Okay. So speaking of like lessons learned from our perspective. It's very important to hear from you because we make a lot of policies, we look at data, but with the one element that we're missing is your voice. So thank you for being here today. So we heard from Liz. Liz, one of the recommendations that you feel is missing that we can improve upon is the communication, listening. Don, we heard from you as far as the mental health aspects of it, incorporating that far in the beginning. Liz, I heard from you. I'm sorry, not Liz, but Eileen, we heard from you as it relates to just better communication, keeping you more so in the loop. But John, what is your insight? What is something that we should take away from this, from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say better communication with me. I mean, I didn't have anyone telling me anything about anything. You know, that first week when I was on fentanyl, it would have been great for somebody to give me some insights into, you know, that it would end, so that I'm not trying to figure things out on my own. That would have been great to tell me, you know, again, I've got tubes down my throat, now I've got a trach. My mouth is so brutally dry, and all you can do is put a little sponge in my mouth that does absolutely nothing for me. Give me some timelines onto when I'm going to be able to eat again or drink something and wet my mouth. When am I going to be able to speak again to somebody? I'm just sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and things are just happening. Eileen and I started an ECMO support group after I got out of the hospital. At Fairfax Hospital, we struggled from a hospital perspective and getting people on the staff side, the nurses and stuff, to tell family members that we were available. And then COVID hit, and then it just kind of died out. But the things that we talked about with the family members and the patients is to kind of give them some of those timelines, to tell them that, hey, your family member's on fentanyl. Here's what's going to be going on from their perspective. Every single time this person's awake, tell them when they're on fentanyl that it's going to end. If we already weaned them off, give them some kind of timeline. I put a timeline together as to all the things that happened for me. When did I get to eat? When did I get to drink again? When did I get a speaking valve? So that the patients that we visited with would at least have some kind of time frame. Is this months away? Is it days away? Is it hours away? So I think from a communication, yes, I know you're dealing with a ton of things with me, but my goals are, I want to move again. I want to be able to eat and drink something again. I want to be able to talk to somebody again. Tell me when those things, and even a ballpark of how far off those things are. So I just think a better communication from a patient perspective.
Thank you so much. Another question I have for you all, you spoke more so about what your course was like, during the hospital, identifying what the cardiac issue was. How has your recovery or your follow-up been after everything has been identified? So how has post-treatment, if you will, been for you?
For me, post-treatment was, in the beginning, was challenging because the information, it was too much information all at once, right? Granted, like John, you want to know what's happening because him and I are similar in the way of my thought process, because if I have a goal, I can work towards that goal. If I have a clear understanding as to what we're working on this week or today, I'm mentally able to start to program and work on myself mentally, and hopefully it'll manifest physically. So in the beginning it was challenging, but now I'm great. I'm a lot more informed than I was, and I utilize my experience to be a voice for the lower income community that I currently work in, for the families and the moms that are there, just to educate them to be able to speak up for themselves, not just as it relates to the cardiac challenges, but just their health in general. And to educate some of our residents to say, hey, you have to prioritize your health. You got to
Hey,
eat
John,
better.
do you know who has my patients?
Go ahead.
Somebody's on the clock.
Yes.
You know, you need to eat better, you need to exercise better, and all of those things will be beneficial in the long run when you do find yourself in position where you are essentially fighting for your life. So as of right now, I'm good. Again, I'm so grateful that I had that experience because it's so much that I know now that I didn't know before, and I'm able to use that to help others. So yeah.
So I will say that after the event, I got a call weekly from a caseworker checking in on me, wanting to make sure I'm eating or how things are going. And that was a reassurance that I did not expect. And that lasted up until I believe I started cardiac rehab. And then that might have been the trigger that it didn't need to go on any further, because cardiac rehab, they were going to ask me all the questions. So that was reassuring and gave me a sense that the hospital was more than just a hospital, that they were reaching out and had care, had something in their mind to make sure I was doing well. Meeting, with the cardiologist, it was more or less the practitioners, the assistants. I didn't meet an official cardiologist until my July appointment this year. And that was almost canceled and moved to October of this year, and I refused to accept a cancellation. I really wanted to talk to a cardiologist because I wanted to know how I was doing. So everything was fine. My interaction with the doctors, the medical community, has been good and limited. And I've done a lot of research on my own. So that's my experience.
Yeah, we didn't have any follow-up from the hospital. I did meet with a cardiologist after I got healthy enough, and that was probably within a few months after I got out of the hospital, and met with that cardiologist on whatever the periodic basis that he wanted to meet with me. I think we also had his cell phone number and could text him. Like I'd never had heartburn before in my life until after I got home, and about a week after I got home, I don't know if I'm having another heart attack. It didn't feel like this when I was on the basketball court. So we texted the cardiologist. He's like, take some Tums and then let me know. And it went away right away. And I'm like, okay, that was just heartburn. I've never had that before. But not from the hospital's perspective. I think probably Eileen would have liked that. Again, she doesn't want to kill me after I got home after 12 weeks of surviving this. She didn't want to kill me, and somebody checking in with her on a periodic basis would have been probably pretty good. We do have a friend who's a nurse, and I'm sure Eileen had several conversations with the nurse about things about me, but not anybody that was at Fairfax Hospital.
Thank you so much. Eileen, from a caregiver perspective, is there anything you wanted to add?
Like just kind of like what John said. I mean, I was lucky. I do have a friend that's a nurse, and she came by, and I probably called her more times than I needed to call her. I mean, he had therapy that came, not great, but we didn't have any type of aid or anything like that, which may have helped because he was still what I consider quite fragile. So that would have been nice. And I don't know if it's because there was a lot going on, and he went to rehab, and so I don't know if I should have gone to rehab caseworker. I didn't really get a lot of.
No one brought it up.
No, and I remember them working with me, setting up like therapy and stuff, but that was really about it. So, yeah, having a little bit more support would have been nice.
Thank you. Janae, I'm sorry, I'm going to call upon you. I did see you go off mute before I start speaking. Do you have a question you wanted to pose to our panelists?
Thank you. Yes, actually, well, first and foremost, thank you everyone for your stories. They've been so insightful and transparent, and really incredible. One of the questions I wanted to ask, as we all probably have someone similar to yourselves who have experienced something like this, and I think the community aspect of how your personal circles, how your community showed up for you. And I'm curious in ways that were impactful and helpful and helped you in those really difficult times, and perhaps would help us then be able to extend that same impact to those that we love.
Yeah, since I was in the hospital the longest out of our group here, I think I mentioned this as I was telling my story, I had a family member or friend with me from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. every single day, and I needed it. I am helpless in the bed, and I need somebody watching me, and just, yeah, watching my back. And I know that a lot of times they were disappointed that they would come in to see me and I'm going to go to sleep, but I know someone's watching over me, so I felt I could relax for a second and finally get some sleep, because overnight I'm on high alert because I'm here by myself and I can't communicate with people. So having that was so huge for me and absolutely helped with my recovery. And the group of them, and I don't know, there was probably a dozen or more people who had a Google Calendar, and they would sign up for time slots, and they would be there and they would sit for hours with me every single day. I even had some of my employees at work who would come in the morning before, once I was able to eat again, and before I could move my arms, who were coming in and feeding me. Who would have thought that I'd be hiring people who would later come in and have to feed me? But yeah, I had a really incredible support group, and it made things a lot easier. All I had to do was focus on moving and getting out of the hospital. I didn't have to worry about the other things because I had a group there that were there watching and taking care of me from that perspective.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Because life is so busy, for people to take time out of their day to sit with you and having that's amazing. For me, I have one of my best friends was at the time, I believe she was employed at Inova, so we utilized her service a lot. I would call and text her whenever I felt off, or I felt like Google was not steering me in the right direction. I needed an actual professional to talk to. Um, and then just having a partner, a supportive partner. My husband was absolutely amazing. In addition to caring for our newborn, um, he was so intentional and so present with me, and ensured that I didn't have to worry about anything, just to get back on my feet and make sure that I was well physically and mentally. So that was how I was able to bounce back. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. Charmaine, Dr. Spear, Wendy, David, and Carolyn, thank you so much, and the entire Inova team, for connecting us with these amazing individuals. And rest assured, they are now a part of the VCSQI. Okay. So we have some resources that we can tap into as we create our protocols and work groups, because we do need to bring in that patient perspective. So thank you so very much, John, Liz, Eileen, and Don, who stepped away for a moment. He probably went to go grab a snack, but he has to know that grabbing snacks, you have to share some type of way, you have to mail it. But thank you again for joining us. We will let you go for the evening. We will send this recording out to everyone. This is a valuable piece. And our VCSQI family, please let us know how you feel about this. Is this something that we should incorporate more? We speak a lot about this within our DEI work group, which is why this is an opportunity that this came up this time. And actually, before we close it, Don, did you want to answer that question before we close out?
Yeah, I'm sorry. One of my daughters is home. I just had to do a quick check. The neighbors were great. When I came home from the hospital, because my stay was so short, they just brought food over, mowed the front yard. They just did everything to make sure we didn't have to do anything, at least for the first week I was home. So neighbors are very, very critical, especially when our family's in South Florida. So we didn't have any family here. We just had neighbors. And as they say, they stepped up to the plate and they hit a home run.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you for joining us. And to give us some closing remarks, I am going to pass it back to the Executive Director of VCSQI, the amazing Eddie Fauner. Would you close us out, please?
You're too kind, Sherry. Well, I don't know really what I can say more than all of our amazing patients have said thus far. It's just it's truly incredible for all of you to have been a part of our meeting this evening, and I really hope we can keep this conversation going with you all. I just want to thank you all again, and just know that your experiences, all your stories have been so valuable to our audience this evening. So wishing you all a very happy and safe holiday season. We will be in touch, and thank you to all of our VCSQI members as well for attending this evening.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, guys.